Coming up on Focus, we showcase the people, places, and issues that matter to you. First, we tour one of the oldest buildings in South Bethlehem. Built in 1858, Sayre Mansion shines like a beacon over the hill-to-hill bridge. We take you inside this historic inn and learn about the man who called it home. Then we share the story of an Allentown boy who battled cancer like a hero and still inspires those who love him more than a year after his death. We'll have these stories, plus an expert panel to discuss fair housing in the Lehigh Valley, right now on Focus. Focus showcases the people, places, and issues that matter to you.
Everybody has a story.
These are the stories that uplift and inspire right here in your neighborhood.
Focus on what matters. You never know what you're going to see when you tune into Focus.
Support for Focus is provided by
You're safe at home at Luther Crest, a Diacon senior living community in Allentown. Our mission is to offer premier accommodations and services so residents can cultivate a healthy and fulfilling retirement. At Luther Crest, we offer independent living apartments and cottages, personal care, skilled nursing, rehabilitative services, and more. Plus, the Luther Crest team strives to provide each person family-like support. You might say it's like a home run. Luther Crest.
News doesn't stop. We cover it 24/7, 365, because that's what our readers demand from us. You need to know what's going on, who's playing by the rules, or who's breaking them, who's winning and who's losing. The full range of the human experience plays out every day in the pages of our newspaper and website. The platform you choose to engage with us is your business. Delivering the news is ours.
Welcome to Focus. I'm Laura McHugh. Our first story takes us to Bethlehem's historic Sayre Mansion. I've probably driven past this beautiful brick bed and breakfast 1,000 times, but only recently I had the chance to peek inside for myself. With a special segment called Roots, here's Focus reporter Grover Silcox with a tour especially for you.
Thanks, Laura. This 19th century treasure once served as home to one of the region's most successful businessmen and philanthropists. Guests who come here walk through the front door and into history. Take a look.
Every day, commuters drive by the stately Sayre Mansion standing on a rise overlooking the Lehigh River at the south side of Bethlehem's hill-to-hill bridge. For many, the grand old house built by Robert Sayre in 1858 wins a passing glance. And yet, this house, which looms as big in history as it does over their commute, offers a window into the life of a man who served as a powerhouse of American industry.
Robert Sayre was the first to build the home in this area of Bethlehem that today forms part of the Fountain Hill National Register Historic District.
He was president of the Lehigh Valley Railroad, business partner of Asa Packer.
Packer the millionaire funded the railroad, and Sayre the engineer built it.
Packer chose him to be basically the chief engineer in charge of laying out and building a railroad from Mock Chunk, now Jim Thorpe, to Easton in order to haul coal.
Sayre centered the railroad in Bethlehem and went on with Packer to build the Bethlehem Iron Company in 1860, which later became Bethlehem Steel.
Robert Sayre built his house here to be in the middle of everything that was going on.
It's fascinating to stand on the porch of the Sayre Mansion and overlook what was the former Bethlehem Steel Corporation and the development of South Bethlehem.
From his house on the hill, Sayre could see his operations. Inside his 23-room house, he enjoyed the luxuries those operations provided.
So it was built as a large house for a large family.
Sayre had 12 children and 4 wives. He outlived 3.
A lot of the bedrooms are still original. The servants' quarters have been converted into overnight guest quarters. The living room and dining room are as they were built in 1858.
Grant Genslinger and his family bought the mansion in 2002 and transformed it into a bed and breakfast hotel.
I think our guests love the sense of place in terms of history, that it is well preserved and well presented to them. They also like the fact that it's an urban inn in the middle of a very historic town.
The Genslingers made some changes to accommodate guests. But much of the house is as it was when the Sayers lived here.
The room we're sitting in has a surround on the ceiling of iron fretwork, which of course came from Mr. Sayer's factory, going back to 1858.
One can imagine Robert Sayer inviting his affluent neighbors to one of his many socials held in these rooms.
Most of the furniture is period to when he lived here. Other than a few original manuscripts and books that we've collected, most of it is period to his time, but not original. The exception to that are the fireplaces. They're as built by Mr. Sayer.
So is his reading room.
This is where he did his work. His librarian would bring him books that he would ask her to fetch from the library.
He had a 10,000-volume library for which he built a 2-story addition in 1899. This space has now been divided into 5 rooms, including what was called the conservatory on the 3rd floor. The skylight roof, which provided light for the conservatory and library, remains intact.
Even going back to the Renaissance, having a library was something that men of a certain stature needed to have.
Sayer's family gave many of his books to Lehigh University when he died in 1907. Sayer was always devoted to the school as the man chosen to build it by Asa Packer, the school's founding father.
The original concept behind Lehigh was primarily as a technical school, but they wanted engineers and gentlemen. There was always going to be a liberal arts component.
A strict Episcopalian, Sayer helped found the Cathedral Church of the Nativity across from his house.
The first service was held where we're sitting right now in this living room in 1861, and he built the church, which was completed in 1865. The first service was actually held the day of President Lincoln's funeral.
There is an interesting story that when Robert Sayer's daughter married a Linterman, that they laid a red carpet from the Sayer mansion over to the Episcopal Cathedral.
Why did these 19th century businessmen do so much for the community?
And I do think it has to do with their strong, rather ascetic, Puritan, Protestant beliefs that made them feel that somehow becoming rich was a sign of God's favor, and that they had a responsibility then to give back.
Sayer was also instrumental in founding Bethlehem's St. Luke's Hospital.
St. Luke's was founded with the idea that there would be a place for injured workers, at least to get some medical treatment. It really wasn't until Asa Packer died and left them $300,000 that St. Luke's really was able to become a first-class medical facility.
What would Robert Sayer say today if he could see so much of what he founded still thriving, from St. Luke's to Lehigh University to his house on the hill?
Well, I think he would be delighted, because this was his life, was this quadrant of business, family, relationships, and church.
And a legacy that endures for all to see. For Focus, I'm Grover Silcox reporting.
Thanks, Grover. Each year, more than 10,000 kids in the United States will be diagnosed with cancer. In 2013, Allentown's Zakai Talesha died after battling bone cancer like a hero. To share his story, here's Focus reporter Brittany Garzillo.
Thanks, Laura. As part of National Volunteer Month, many have found themselves doing their part to keep the community clean. Some may say these folks were heroing up, a message coined by Zakai Talesha, a local boy who lost his battle to cancer just over 1 year ago, but his message continues to inspire the hero in all of us.
As this tree grows and blossoms and continues to grow over the years, it will continuously remind us of Zakai and how he impacted people's lives throughout the city.
A year after his death, friends and family of Zakai Talesha plant a tree in his honor so that his spirit will continue to grow with each passing day.
To all of us, he was a superhero.
One of the things that basically kept me going was actually my family and my friends. I would never be here without them.
At age 7, Zakai was diagnosed with the bone cancer osteosarcoma. He went through several surgeries and chemotherapy, but his cancer continued to relapse.
So once he got the gist that I can't change this, and this is what I have to do, and he logically got it through his head, he began to inspire other kids.
In their Allentown home, Zakai's adopted parents Mark and Susan Talesha sort through dozens of posters that remind them of how many hearts their son touched.
Zakai was really big into philanthropy and helping people.
His life is an example that you don't have to be a victim of your circumstances.
He dealt with his pain and his circumstance with dignity. He gave back wherever he could. He inspired other kids to give back.
He battled it out to the end, and he'd say that he would be in pain, and then he would just put it in the back of his head just to make you smile just one last time.
Despite his health, Zakai's family say his spirit for the small things couldn't be broken.
We would celebrate half birthdays, and half birthdays were always a big deal for him.
He was just fun like that, very driven for success. He wanted to be an inventor and make a pill that would make cancer go away.
Every day I get to live is like another day that I get to share my story, get to touch other people's hearts.
Zakai lost his nearly 5-year battle with bone cancer on April 29, 2013, his 12th and a half birthday. But his legacy lives on.
He wanted to leave a message, that little things do make a big difference. And so many people along his journey, whether they were in our life for a day or whether they were in our life the whole way, they made an impact.
You want me to read this one?
For Zakai, it was the Emmaus-based publisher Rodale Inc. that helped make an impact on his life when they made his dream of writing a comic book come true.
Hero Up is a group of superheroes that live in Herotropolis, which is above us somewhere in a cloud, and they fight the bad guys, and they get together to save the world.
Rodale was so kind. They would come over here and work with him and get and help him to focus on the details, which was great.
About $8,000 of the thousands sold went to benefit Angel 34. Today it helps fund an annual Hero Up birthday party in memory of Zakai and support a foster care support group for local families.
Zakai was Venom Transporter.
There were times in tears that he said, "I wish I was my superhero." And I would punch this cancer right out of my chest. And what do you say? I wish it was too.
Superman! Cleaning up the neighborhood, being a hero.
Yeah! On this day, friends, family, and community members grab brooms and brushes to take part in the Great Allentown cleanup. It's here at McKinley Elementary that Zakai's message left its mark.
We are cleaning it and making the school a better place.
Just had a really important impact on our school, and we try to share his story with all of our kids still about sort of overcoming adversity and heroing up.
Zakai realized in his life there was hundreds of people who gave into his life and helped him to grow into the little man that he ended up being, and so he wanted others to go out and to do little things, make a big difference in those around him.
A message that the little things like a smile or a helping hand can make a big difference and help the hero grow in all of us. Just like Zakai thought every kid can become a hero, Nicole Sheriff thought every child should have an angel. Nicole lost her battle against cancer in 2004. Today, Nicole's parents, Doug and Linda, keep her legacy alive through Angel 34. Doug's here to tell us more. Doug, thanks so much for joining us.
It's great to be here.
So share with us about Nicole's story.
Nicole was diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma in 2002, and during her battle with cancer, she had found ICES help offset a lot of the side effects come along with chemo radiation treatments. And so, unfortunately, these machines aren't in children's hospitals, so Mom and Dad had to go find these ICES. And when she got out of the hospital and went through her stem cell transplants and went back to playing field hockey, she wanted to help make a difference, and she started raising money to put these machines into children's hospitals. But during her stays in hospitals, she would listen to things that were going on around her, and she would ask us questions like, why were kids by themselves? Why were parents losing their homes and their jobs? Why were kids dying without their parents with them? And we had to explain to her the situations because of the health insurance and those types of things. She goes, that's wrong, we need to do something about that. So beyond the ICE machine, she started raising money to provide those financial assistance to cover medical bills. And before she passed in 2004, she set up her foundation. And not only do we provide the financial assistance in the ICE machines, but we also provide pet therapy programs, medical staffing through scholarships, and cancer research.
And so Angel 34 was established in 2003, and you've helped thousands of families across the nation fight childhood cancer, and of course you're in hopes of finding a cure. Talk to us about some of the ongoing programs that you have.
We do Angel Field, which is our bed and breakfast and retreat in Nazareth. It's a place where children can come out and spend a day with their family and have some normalcy in their life in a non-threatening area. We also have Derek's Camp Flip Flop, which is named after the young men we lost, which is at Wildwood Crest, New Jersey. They get to spend 4 days and 3 nights, and they get the flavor of the Wildwood Crest, and that's for 2 weeks. And then we have Arby's Raise for Hope, which is our sunflower festival that we do. We plant 19,000 sunflowers each year in memory of a little girl that we lost, and
wow.
So it's been a good experience.
And I know you have a lot of things coming up in the future in the next several months. Talk to me and tell me about how people can get involved in those events.
Well, there's a lot of ways people can get involved. They can volunteer at Angel Field, but they can also attend one of our upcoming events. In July, we have our Unique Pretzel golf tournament, and then the 19th of July, we have our Outback Steakhouse poker run. And then we get into September, which is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. We actually have our Glow Run, first one ever in the Valley, our 5K walking and run, Glow Run that we're doing. And then in October 4th, we have our 3rd annual Wheels for Hope Tour de Hershey bike ride from Lehigh Valley down to Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun, and it's certainly for a good cause. So Doug, you help families across the nation. What is the one thing that makes it all worthwhile for you?
I think Nicole's statement that, we're all angels in disguise with God-given talents to make a difference in the lives of others that are less fortunate. It's that having that opportunity every day to go out there and make that difference. And Angel 34 is more than a name. It's a cause for hope and an inspiration by faith for those kids that have that angel with them.
Doug, thank you so much for sharing all this wonderful information. We wish you the best of luck and all the families battling childhood cancer, and we hope that you do find a cure.
Thank you.
Laura?
Thanks, Brittany and Doug. Our next guests were recently involved in a summit on fair housing. I'm now joined by Ryan Conrad, CEO of the Lehigh Valley Association of Realtors, which hosted the summit. Also on the panel, Vicki Coyle of North Penn Legal Services and Alan Jennings, Executive Director of the Community Action Committee of the Lehigh Valley. Welcome to Focus. Alan, I'll start with you. This summit follows a report that CACLV released in 2012 that found that several realtors in Allentown were actually violating fair rights laws. What did that report find?
Well, we did some testing where we had trained volunteers who approached people who sold real estate, and one would be a white buyer, another would pose as a minority buyer, and see if they were treated differently. We did 33 tests like that, and we suspected we had problems, which is why we did this. And of the 33 tests, 73% came back as conclusively disparate treatment, which meant illegal treatment, according to the organization that we worked with to do that testing. And as a result of that, that causes a lot of problems in a marketplace, and those are problems that we need to fix, and we approached the association and found a very willing constituency to fix the problem.
This is one step to fix that problem, is hosting the summit, right?
Exactly. Yeah, this was part of, well, first of all, let me backtrack. When we heard of the reporting results, we were obviously, it was an eye-opener for us, certainly for us as an industry. And our board of directors made what I believe to be one of the most important decisions that they've ever made, which was, let's work cooperatively with the organizations involved with the testing. Let's see what we can do to work as an industry together to actually improve fair housing compliance. And that, setting up that collaborative and cooperative approach to it really led to a successful set of outcomes over the past few years, ultimately culminating in the summit, which we hosted in April. But we set into place a series of action steps as a result of the testing results. Our board felt very strongly that even though these were allegations, one allegation was certainly one too many, and we needed to step up to the plate. So we have about 7 or 8 different action steps that we took, including a broker pledge action plan where we asked our brokers to reaffirm their commitment to fair housing. We had education topics that we provided to brokers on a monthly basis so that they can pass that along to their agents to increase compliance. We developed a diversity task force that's looking at how do we create a culture of diversity within the organization and in the industry. We also did an event highlighting the city of Allentown and a lot of the revitalization efforts that are taking place there, along with the Fair Housing Summit, as we talked about.
Ryan, how many of your members have participated in these events?
We have about 2,000 realtors that we represent throughout the industry, and so a significant portion of them. We've held nearly 24 educational forums where we have, probably in the hundreds in terms of realtors participating in those. So we've had a lot of successful events getting this information out there to them.
Vicki, fair housing doesn't just apply to people who are buying homes, it applies to people who are also renting as tenants.
Correct.
How common is fair housing discrimination in the Lehigh Valley?
Unfortunately, it's a lot more common than anyone really thinks. What we see probably as the most common problem is disability discrimination. So for us, I would say the most common call is someone who calls up and needs an accommodation for a disability. And so, for example, a story I can tell you quickly would be someone who calls up and says, I need access to my house and my landlord isn't doing anything about it. And if that landlord is receiving any public funds, any federal funds, then that landlord needs to comply with the Fair Housing Act and needs to provide access to the home for that individual. So it could be building a ramp into the home, it could be providing a handicapped parking space closer to the home, if it's an apartment building, for example. It could be giving that person who might have a disability a little extra time to comply with some rules about keeping a house clean in order to prevent an eviction. It could be any number of things, but the landlord needs to maybe change rules, maybe to talk to the tenant to find out what that tenant needs in order to be able to live in that home. Because for some people, if they can't maintain that home, if they can't stay in that home, then to move out of that home is going to put them on the private market. And for our clients who are very limited with their income, then they're going to be living in an apartment that is now on the market value, which is going to be about $900 a month, and we're talking about people who are in poverty. And so that takes them from a $500 a month apartment, subsidized apartment, to $900, and they can't afford that.
Vicki, you mentioned specifically people with disabilities. Who else is protected under our fair housing laws?
Oh, it's family status. So we see discrimination, we'll see discrimination in advertising. You'll see discrimination that says we'll rent to people without kids, or property managers who say no children in first floor apartments only. So we're not going to rent any families on second floors because they say kids make too much noise. It could be race, sex, national origin, any of those kinds of, lots of protected classes under the Fair Housing Act.
Is sexual orientation covered under the Fair Housing
No,
laws?
sexual orientation is not, but sexual harassment is.
And what's interesting is the realtor organization, part of being a realtor means you subscribe to a strict code of ethics that governs your actions during a real estate transaction. The code of ethics outlines your obligations to your fellow realtors, to consumers, and also to the members of the public. And it's a really important document that our realtor members subscribe to. And what the realtors have done proactively has said, okay, in addition to the 7 protected classes that are in the Fair Housing Act, we are also going to add sexual orientation to something that we believe is worth protecting and taking care of in terms of the code of ethics. So realtors have really kind of stepped up to the plate and said, we're going to take that on because we know this is really important.
In the summit, I know you discussed a lot of real life scenarios that have happened in the Lehigh Valley. Would any of you be willing to share what some of those scenarios are and how your members responded to that type of education?
Well, one scenario that I mentioned at the summit was we did have a client who came to us who was evicted from his house at a magistrate's hearing. The reason he was evicted was because the landlord said his apartment was too dirty, and it was in fact too dirty and probably was a health hazard. It was dirty because he had physical disabilities that prevented him from being able to keep his apartment clean on a daily basis. He also had a mental health condition, hoarding. So between the two things, he couldn't keep the apartment clean. The landlord refused to listen and just went through with the eviction. He came to us after he was evicted. He was still in the apartment, but there was an order for eviction. For 9 months, our staff attorney tried to contact the landlord and get the apartment re-inspected and said, we have this client working with a therapist who deals with him on his hoarding issue. We have him, he has contacted a housekeeper. He has someone coming in weekly because he worked. So he was able to pay someone to come in and keep his house clean and help him with daily cleaning activities. The landlord refused for 9 months, refused our attorney's phone calls, refused letters, and wouldn't talk to her to re-inspect the apartment for 9 months. All that time, he kept the apartment clean.
And that's what makes advocates get pretty aggressive at dealing with people who aren't fessing up and facing up to their realities. One of the things that we need to understand is that a lot of the things that are illegal seem reasonable, like pointing out that a school district is better than another school district, or saying that it's a, quote, quiet neighborhood and things like that, which are important to buyers or to shoppers and seem perfectly reasonable, but they're violations because they're sort of buzzwords. They're hints that suggest that you only want to be around certain kinds of people. And that's the kind of stuff that we've got to be very careful about.
And working collaboratively with these, Vicki and Alan, we were able to identify those kinds of issues and bring experts in to speak about those at the Fair Housing Summit, like a disability discrimination in rental housing expert as well. So, the school example is another example in the testing as a real life scenario. Some of the realtors were describing a school district a certain way as this is not a good school district, you don't want to live here, versus another school district. And, while a consumer might expect that from their realtor, that's not what is allowed under the law, and that's not what a realtor should be describing.
And following up with, what Alan said, we'll talk to some property managers who will say, we get complaints from some of the seniors who live in a big apartment complex that children are too loud or they don't like pets. So the property manager will say, I should just put all the seniors in these buildings over here. I should put all the families with kids over here. I should put all the people with pets over here. And, and we look at them and say, okay, that's segregation. Have you been in this country long enough to know how well that didn't work for us the first time around? I mean, that's a pretty clear violation of the Fair Housing Law. You can't do that. People have a choice. Fair Housing Law is about choice. People get to choose where they live. You can't put them where you think they should go. That's really the basis of what this law is.
In conclusion, if someone is watching and knows someone or believes that they've been a victim of discrimination, what should they do?
For us, if they can call us, we're the Regional Fair Housing Coordinator for the Lehigh Valley. We'll listen to them, we'll help them file a complaint with HUD, we'll help negotiate with the landlord. They can call our office at 610-317-5322 and leave a message on a voicemail, and we'll call back and screen them. There are no income guidelines for that number, and then we'll talk to them and handle it accordingly.
The realtors have resources available on their website, lvar.org, how to file a complaint, not only with HUD, but also to contact organizations like Vicki's. But we also have a professional standards process that a consumer can file a complaint against a realtor, and it can be heard by an independent panel of realtors.
Finally, Alan.
Well, we are the fight pickers in the Lehigh Valley, and we're the systems change agent. And so if people find that they're being discriminated against and they think it's brazen enough that we ought to start a challenge over it, we'd love to hear from them. The realtors have been great. They've been the focal point, unfortunately, but there's a whole industry out there that needs to get in step, and it would be great if they would all step up the way Ryan and the Lehigh Valley Association of Realtors has.
Alan, Vicki, Ryan, thanks for sharing this information with our viewers.
Thank you.
Here at Focus, we love to hear from you, our viewers. Connect with us on Facebook and Twitter at PBS 39 Channel or on our website, wlvt.org/focus. Well, Grover, when we talk about Sayre Mansion, what a lot of people may not realize is that in the 80s and 90s, it had fallen into such complete disrepair that I believe there was talk about demolishing it.
Yeah, there was. It was in real danger. Right after Sayre died in the early 1900s, it went on to become a fraternity house for Lehigh University, and then it went through a number of different owners. And it did look like it was in danger of being demolished there for a while. Thank God for some nonprofits in the Lehigh Valley and the Ginslingers for turning it into a beautiful bed and breakfast, still rich in the history of the Lehigh Valley.
So Sayre's legacy lives on, as does Zakai's.
That's right, and little things do make a big difference, and we see that every day. But there was a Hero Up award recently given out to a local community member, so that's something they hope to carry on as well, and they hope that his message lives on, not only just locally, but nationwide as well.
Thank you so much. Well, we'll see you next week. Until then, remember to focus on what matters.
Superfoods are ingredients that have been scientifically proven to improve your health. They're easy to find and use and delicious. My recipes are fast, easy, and heart healthy. Eating well is not about avoiding foods, it's about eating the right foods.
Join Chef Walter Stabe as he creates healthy, tasty, delicious, and simple recipes using the superfoods that are easy to find, delicious, and scientifically proven to improve your health.
Join me in cooking with superfoods.
Premieres May 27th at 7:30.
In 1948, John Walson put an antenna on top of a mountain and ran a cable back to his television store. Cable TV was born. Now, over 60 years later, his vision has changed the way we get our information, from super high-speed internet to stunning high-definition television. Service Electric is committed to leading the way in the community with the best coverage of local high school, college, and professional sports, and groundbreaking technology in this ever-changing world. Service Electric Cable